All right, hey guys, good to see you again. Been a long time, I know. So it seems like that the video I did this morning came out a lot better. Um, I know most of you watch it on your phones anyway, so hopefully the sideways ones didn't affect it that much. But hopefully this will be the deal going forward. All right, so here is I forget the assignment number, 22 maybe, but this is the grid for the market structure characteristics. Um, So we had some issues here. I didn't really notice a trend because I was kind of just scanning them quickly, seeing if they were mostly right or mostly wrong. I don't think we're needing to jump off any bridges or anything, even though market structures are important. I did comment that a lot of you had some issues, and we're going to want to check out the video once I get it up. I think a lot of this just might be not completely understanding my verbiage on here. I think you probably get the general idea, but again, that's why we're supposed to be there together so we can talk about it together. But obviously, that's not going to happen this year. So let's run through it. I'm going to go section by section instead of structure by structure. Doesn't really matter. I just kind of how I was thinking about it, right? And I think that way is better than going straight through the alphabet. And I think maybe that's what a lot of us did. Like you looked at the first one and said many. All right, well, where's A? Where's many? And we were pretty good on that one. Number of firms for perfect competition. And again, maybe we didn't read the instructions clearly. It does say some letters will be used multiple times. So there's two places we should have used many. But whatever. Again, I'm going to go down the columns for the characteristics and hit them for each market structure. All right. We did not perfect here. Again, maybe some of that's because of the vernacular verbiage that I used. The other sheet with the market structure identifiers, there we had more of an issue and not sure why, or that has me a little bit more concerned. So we'll do that next. Right. So perfect competition. The best example would be letter D, which is wheat. Right. Wheat is wheat. And that would be a commodity, right? Your wheat is not going to be too much different than anybody else's wheat, yada, yada, yada. For monopolistic competition, the best example, that one I did notice a bunch of people put flip-flopped monopolistic competition and perfect competition. Monopolistic competition, the best example was R for women's boots. A lot of you had R for perfect competition. That one doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Boots can vary in a multitude of different ways, and definitely not interchangeable or a commodity. So that one had me a little confused. An oligopoly would be F, cable TV providers. There's more than one. Now that we're in 2002, there's a good amount of them, right? And now there's all streaming and everything too, but a couple giant ones tend to dominate. Right, where it's either using Optimum or Cablevision or the same thing, I don't know, or satellite dish, whatever. And then monopoly would be Y, which was a regulated utility like electricity or water or something like that. Right. As far as numbers of firms, I said this a second ago. You have many in perfect competition, but one of the reasons why monopolistic competition is similar to perfect competition is because they also have many firms. Right? So we should have an A there as well. For oligopoly, not that many, so I think it should be few, and that's K. We don't have an exact number. It's not exactly 4 or 5 because, again, it's about the market concentration ratio. Right? So I gave you that example on one of the answer sheets that I typed up about how the same number of firms, just changing the percentages of market share that those firms have a little bit, could put you from more competitive to highly concentrated, less competitive. And then for monopoly, obviously, it is T, which is just 1. Okay. The type of product that you're talking about for perfect competition would be G, which is homogeneous. Okay, meaning it's all the same. For monopolistic competition, it should be J, which is differentiated, a huge or key element of monopolistic competition is the differentiated product. For oligopoly, we're going with S because it could be either or. Like oil, again, is a good example of an oligopoly, right? So in that case, oil is just oil. But another example of oligopoly is the soda industry, where Coke and Pepsi have differentiated themselves. And type of product monopoly should be U, and that is completely unique. It's the only one. And again, that could be a little confusing because you might be saying, wait a second, you said it was electricity, and electricity, a watt is a watt, whether it comes from PSEG or, the North Carolina's electrical company, whatever. So again, if you got some of these wrong, it's not the end of the world. But a monopoly should be the only one. Again, De Beers had a monopoly for all intents and purposes on diamonds for a while. Is a diamond a diamond? Yes, right? So again, there could have been a little confusion there. Control over price. None price takers would be your perfectly competitive firm or industry, and that was H. Monopolistically competitive, we went with I. Not a lot. The tip-off or the clue that I tried to include there was more if you can establish brand loyalty, right? If you can establish brand loyalty where I'm a Puma guy, right? I'm always going to buy Pumas. If the Pumas get a little bit more expensive, I'm gonna buy them anyway. Again, monopolistically competitive industry like frozen pizza. Again, I tend to like Stouffer's. If Stouffer's is a little bit more expensive, I'll still buy it. My wife would rather have a DiGiorno or whatever. Bruschetta is not a bad one either. For some reason, that's the frozen pizza. It's funny what things you can't find. Like, obviously, people are crazy and you can't find toilet paper or paper towels, but some of the other items that there's just really, I've been still hitting the supermarket as often as I need to. Frozen pizzas is one of the things that the shelves are really bare in that area. Okay, for oligopoly, should be X, which is some, and more if they collude. The tip-off there was the word collude, right? Because collusion only comes up when you're talking about oligopolies, right? So they do have a decent amount of control over price, even more if they collude, and they can act more like a monopoly. And a monopoly has B, a lot. And I have a little note here to change the ditto and include a lot of control over price. So again, you notice I got rid of letter P. I forget what that was, but it must have been something causing confusion. So I got rid of letter P. And so I've tinkered with this ditto a bunch of times over the years. Obviously, I still don't have it exactly right. Ease of entry, barriers to entry. For perfect competition, we have M. Easy peasy, no barriers at all. Anybody who wants in can get in. For monopolistic competition, we have L. That's not right. No, sorry, V. I was looking at the wrong column. V. Relatively easy, low barriers. Yeah, there are barriers, but nothing too terrible. Again, think of stepping over a higher and higher hurdle. For oligopoly, it's W. Difficult means you have significant barriers. And for monopoly, it's Q. Totally blocked. Ain't nobody getting in. 10-foot wall. Berlin Wall. Nobody getting through. Long-range profits in perfect competition and monopolistic competition. This is how they're similar. You have normal, just breaking even, or zero economic profit. And again, that means that you have positive accounting profit, because accounting profit's always greater because they don't include implicit costs. And for oligopoly and monopoly, again, it's the same thing. It is normal. Normal. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, normal. They could just be breaking even, or they could be making a profit, depending on what's going on. The key is that in the long run, it's impossible to make a positive profit here in perfect and monopolistic competition. Best you can do is just break even. In these two, you could be making a profit if you're doing things right, but you could also be a dope like that one. Um, that was monopolistic competition, but you could be, producing at not your optimal point of marginal cost, any marginal revenue, or being regulated. And there are situations where you could just be breaking even, or maybe even taking a loss if you're really dopey. As far as advertising goes, we have perfectly competitive industries. Um, you could see it. We didn't talk about this much, but you could see it usually only as an industry as a whole. Okay, so the individual milk producers probably not going to advertise, but one of the most well-known advertising campaigns of all time is Got Milk, right? So that's the dairy industry overall. Again, the individual producer of eggs probably not going to make a big deal for them um, to advertise, but as an industry, they could come out with the incredible edible egg, pork. It's what's for dinner, or beef. It's what's for dinner. Sorry, pork, the other white meat. Monopolistically competitive industry. It's the most important for. So that's very important. A means of increasing sales. Okay, so when we get to the other sheet, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Oligopoly is N. Done to increase sales or decrease demand for the other firm, right? We're talking about interdependence, right? So again, think of Pepsi and Coke. A lot of ads, at least back in the day when I used to watch TV more and the people used to have to watch commercials, Super Bowl ads and things like that. A lot of times Pepsi wasn't even trying to tell you anything about how well or good Pepsi tasted or how great of a company they were. It was all about old fogies drink Coke and the young cool people drink Pepsi. And you can think of fast food. I think is more monopolistically competitive, but you might say Burger King and McDonald's are closer to oligopoly. I don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers, but a lot of their advertising is why our burgers are better than the other guys. What's left? And then only thing left is Z. Why would a monopoly bother advertising when you have to go to them anyway? Usually, that's more of a public relations thing, right? I know you have to get your electricity from us anyway, but look how good we did during the last hurricane, or look at how much we give back to charity. We're really a great company, and things like that. Okay. So now that I know I can, I'm going to pause and get the graphs. Actually, you know what? No, let's roll right ahead. Oh, I'll still pause. Okay, being able to pause is so nice. Okay, so here's where I was a little more concerned, and maybe going a little fast and not realizing that for a bunch of these we should have more than one market structure. All right, and here's where I was most concerned. So let's get rolling with this. Then I'll pause again. I'll draw the graphs, and we'll finish the multiple choice, which you guys were pretty good on the multiple choice, right? So where does marginal revenue equal marginal cost and demand and price? That is Mr. Darp, and that is perfect competition. Most people got that, right? The only one where it's everything. Great economies of scale. That's usually a reason. That's a barrier to entry, and usually that's a monopoly. What did I say to write for that? Just mon? Okay, so monopoly, right? Again, it just doesn't make sense to have a second public water supply or a second electricity provider, on and on. Productively and allocatively efficient. Because you're producing at the minimum ATC in the long run, that is productively efficient. Because marginal cost equals marginal revenue equals demand equals price, that's allocatively efficient. The only one that does all of that is perfect competition. And again, allocatively, because price demand equals marginal cost and marginal revenue, and productively efficient because you're at the minimum ATC. Only one that does both is perfect competition. Often practices price discrimination. And again, perhaps an oligopoly will, perhaps monopolistically competitive firms will, but in general, right, if you're talking about price If you're talking about price discrimination, most likely you're talking about monopolies. And we're talking again, I hate to say it like this, but we're talking about the AP exam, which we are. And yes, in real life, other ones could do it as well. 5, marginal revenue curve lies below the demand curve. This one upset me, guys, all right, because a lot of you had correct answers, but not enough of them, right? Because it's everything but, all but, bless you, perfect competition, right? Every other one. That's why we said after you learn monopolistic curves versus um, perfectly competitive curves, that's it, right? Now, everything else, it's all little characteristics here or there that'll tip you off as far as whether it's monopolistically competitive, oligopoly, or monopoly. But the reason you have some control over price and the reason they're not efficient is because all of those, everything but perfect competition, marginal revenue falls under demand. Right? That's an important. Excuse me. That's a really important one. Subject to the interdependence of firms. Can't be a monopoly because they ain't firms. It's just one firm. And monopolistically competitive firms don't really affect each other as much. So this one really should just only be oligopoly. And even if maybe occasionally monopolistically competitive firms can impact each other, again, in general, interdependence, as soon as you see something about interdependence, it's going to be oligopoly. That'd be more, multiple choice strategy than for this year, but whatever. A kinked demand curve is definitely only an oligopoly. And again, that's because if you've reached a point of tacit collusion in an oligopoly, firms will not follow you in a price increase. They will follow you in a price decrease. Right? So again, peanut butter jelly. I see kinked curve. I think oligopoly. Never saw that on part 2, but again, they did hint at the fact that you might get something a little new this year. 8. Zero economic profit or only normal profits in the long run, or just breaking even in the long run. Again, there were more than one here. That obviously is perfect competition, but it's also monopolistic competition. Is that our first monopolistic competition? Well, we had the one that was everything, but okay. So one of the reasons monopolistically competitive industries are like perfectly competitive industries is because ATC is tangent to demand in the long run, which means they're just breaking even in the long run because of entry and exit. 9. This one, I'm sorry, I wanted to punch the computer when I was reading a bunch of yours. Right? Where is your sweet spot where marginal cost hits marginal revenue? All of them. It's the golden rule of economics, anyway, or micro. Where do you want to produce? Well, how do you know what quantity? X marks the spot. Tattoo it on your forehead. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's the best you could be doing, whether you're in oligopoly, monopolistically competitive, perfectly competitive, don't matter. That's where you want to go, right? Whether you're making a profit or not, or a loss, or you should keep producing in the short run or exit in the long run. That all depends on where that spot falls in relation to your ATC and other things, right? But it doesn't matter. Even if your best situation is a loss and exiting, that best situation is marginal cost hits marginal revenue. All right, that one frustrated me a little bit. High market concentration ratio is oligopoly. Obviously, monopoly has the highest market concentration ratio. All right, but then you couldn't even say high. You would just have to say 10,000 and the highest. But again, if you were a little off on exactly, what it was meaning, in the long run, ATC is tangent to demand. Well, why do you just break even? Like it said on number 8, is because your ATC is tangent to your demand. So your total revenue equals your total cost, and that again happens in perfect competition and monopolistic competition. Perfectly elastic demand curve. If you don't know that, we're in real trouble. That's perfectly competitive. Non-price competition, and again, you could say that happens somewhat in oligopolies, but that's more about monopolistic comp, because that's really about differentiation. Okay. Um, and excess capacity, yeah, you could say excess capacity for, again, all of them except um, perfect competition. But that's a term just like interdependence or just like the kink demand curve. That's really zeroing in on monopolistic competition. And again, that is something that would be more of a identifier, multiple choice question. All right, but um, just so you know. All right, where are we at? 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to pause again. I'm going to draw the graphs for the multiple choice. Multiple choice is pretty good. Just a couple things here and there. So that should go pretty quick. And if you got a perfect score um, on the multiple choice, if I told you that in the comments, you could probably stop now. But then you'd miss my, you know, lovely voice for another 10 minutes. Okay, I'll be back in a sec. Okay, we're back. So this is the one for questions 1 and 2. And again, I apologize. I cannot find whatever review book I got these out of. I'll be honest, I did quit at one point and be like, it doesn't matter. I can explain it to you anyway. But so here goes. And please don't think that because you don't have to draw any graphs on your own that we should just forget about all this. We definitely still want to know this. They could change it up this year and give you something more like this as a part 2 and have to ask you to identify these areas. Okay, so hopefully that's pretty clear on there. You can see that. Okay, so the total profits for this monopolist, and they're telling you it's a monopolist. If they didn't, you have no idea whether this was monopolistically competitive or oligopoly or monopoly, unless they had ATC pushed over in tangent and said it was long run equilibrium, then you would know it had to be monopolistically competitive. So they want to know total profits. Okay, so total profits, where are these guys going to produce? Again, sweet spot, marginal cost hitting marginal revenue. So K, they didn't ask you that, but K is going to be your optimal output, right? But you're not going to accept whatever price that is. And I didn't put in all the letters. I only put in the ones that are prevalent to these specific questions. Okay, you're going to jack the price up as high as you can, and that would be the price A. Okay, so they're getting price A, K amount of times. That would be total revenue, though. We don't want total revenue. We want profit. So each time they make one of these things, if we're making this many, it costs them B. So whatever the difference is between price A and price B, that's their per unit profit. That's their per unit profit, and they're getting it that many times. Okay, so this box here in red, or pink, whatever this is, that's their total profit. Okay, so for your answer, it would be choice B, A, B, J, K. A, B, J, K is your total profit. Your total cost, okay, it costs them, we just said, cost them B this many times. Okay, so sorry, picking my color here, go black. Okay, so the total cost would be from B all the way down to O over to K and J. So here, everything in the black. Okay, so it costs them this much to produce this many, and it costs them this many times. Okay, so both boxes together, the red and the black, would be total revenue. Okay, and this would be your cost. So whatever's left over from that combined box is your profit. Okay, doesn't ask you this, but just real quick, if they asked you about regulating for a fair return, it's here where they're just breaking even. If they asked you about making this firm be allocatively efficient, right, and produce here, they wouldn't. Why? Because then they'd be incurring a loss, because that point is below their ATC. Okay. All right. Again, I'm going to pause again and do the next sketch. All right. So this is for questions 3 to 5, which again, we did pretty well on these. First one, the socially optimal price would be. Socially optimal. Oh, okay. So socially optimal is where marginal cost is hitting the demand curve, right? So that's point F. Didn't ask you about the quantity, just asked about the price, so that would be P3. Okay. Marginal cost hits the demand curve. That's socially optimal. That's allocatively efficient. Right, and that's where the last trade is exactly what the producer, it's costing him to produce, and what the last purchaser, consumer, is willing to pay. Right, so that's P3. That was choice A. The unregulated monopolist price, again, sweet spot, MR equals MC. Jack it up and bring it across. That's P1. That was choice C. And the fair return, if it was regulated, again, they're just breaking even. So that's where ATC hits the demand curve, and that is P2. Okay. And just like the last question, right, if they regulated you to be at the socially optimal spot, they would go and close down because they'd be below their ATC and they wouldn't do it. All right. So just real quick to get a little extra practice in, they didn't ask you this, but what would total profit be for this firm? Okay, well, it costs them, and there's no exact numbers here on the side for this one. It costs them this much each time they're producing that many, right? So the difference between point C and let's call this star point, that's their per unit profit, and they're getting it that many times. Okay, so your green is their profit. How do I know that? Because their total cost at that spot, it costs them that much to produce each one when you're producing that many. So we'll make their total cost black. Okay, so again, green and black together is total revenue. Black is total cost. So anything left over is profit. Okay. And just again, you don't have to sketch these. Whatever class you take next year, whether it's having to do this again because your college doesn't accept the credit, or you don't score high enough, or whatever, when you're sketching this stuff, right, do the marginal cost curve first, right, because then you know how you have to draw your ATC. Because it has to be intersecting at ATC's minimum, right? So once I drew my marginal cost curve, I realized, all right, for me to get this to be the minimum, I have to come up a little higher with my ATC. All right. One more pause, one more sketch, 3 more multiple choice, and then I'm done. I'll post some stuff for you guys, and then go grade a whole bunch of global studies work. Unless I find some nice glass to chew, because that's what I'd actually rather do. All right, last one for today. Questions 6 through 8. The reason I was trying so hard to find the book this came from was I feel like I must have left off part of the explanation, or maybe it was just a dopey question. But number 6, the original consumer surplus. I'm just using my notes from back whenever I did this for the first time. I think they were originally saying, or the idea was, if this was perfectly competitive, which means your marginal revenue is also your demand, and then marginal cost hitting marginal revenue, Mr. Darp, and demand would be here. So the correct answer here should have been your original consumer surplus would be from A down to C over to, that's F, right? Yeah, over to F, sorry. Eyes are getting a little blurry here. Because that's the area below demand but above price. Right, so they really didn't make that super clear, and I apologize for that. After the monopolist enters, right now we got a monopoly, marginal revenue falls underneath demand, no longer perfectly competitive, and they can jack the price up. How high are they going to jack it up? They're going to jack it up to G. So now your consumer surplus is anything below demand but above price, which ain't that much. Should be that little teal area there. Trying to use my new markers. All right. And the deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is the triangle that points back to where society wants to be. They want to be there. They are here. Okay, so it's this purple, which looks very much like blue, triangle here. Okay. And that would be area GEF, which is choice E. And just last thing for today, what are we at? 31 minutes, not bad. Combine that with the other one, and I've hopefully wasted less time than usual from your lives. If this firm could perfectly price discriminate, they would get every single transaction, right? So the perfectly price discriminating firm would get all of that. There would be no more consumer surplus. That would all go to the producer, because they would be getting each and every individual consumer's greatest willingness to pay. Okay, so I think that's about it for that. I'm going to go, before I grade my global studies kid stuff, I'm going to shoot out to you. I'm going to upload this, and then I will shoot out to you the 2012 free response questions that I want you to try. Again, the second one is a little tricky. It's not exactly something we've done before, but everything you need to know to complete it. It sounds like Yoda, right? Already know you that which you need. Appropriate on May the 4th. You know everything you need to know to answer it. So just do your best. You know the deal here. E for effort, and graded based on effort. So give it a try, and then I'm going to give you today and tomorrow to watch these videos, to take that demo, do anything you got to do. College board wise, email them, change your email address with them, whatever. Make sure your demo is successful, and then complete the two 2012 FRQs that I'm going to send you, and then I'll do another video. We're finally right side up here, explaining, and I'm only giving you the second two, because the first one from 2012 was the longer one, and it was also it involved a sketch, which why bother right now? And that's it. I'll make that video. I'll probably have it do all this stuff due Wednesday, so I'll make the video Wednesday. You can check that out, and then we'll do another practice free response after that, and we'll keep on going with that. And let me know if you need anything. I know one person wants some of the PowerPoints, the Krugman PowerPoints that we did in class from earlier in the year. I'll get that out to those who request it. And anything, I'm going to shoot you that cheat sheet with all the formulas I can think of. If I'm missing one, please let me know. We'll add that to the sheet. That's something I would definitely print out and have handy. It's got everything about elasticity, and I think just about every formula that you could possibly be needing to use. So I'll get that out to you. And if there's something else that you want, either me to review, to give you a link to a video from somebody who's better at this stuff than I am, or free response questions on a particular topic, whatever. You got the remind, you got my email, and absolutely anything you need, we'll get it for you. It'll probably be a little heavier workload wise. getting to May 20th, because that's that's our finish line, you know. Um, After that, I am going to continue. As I said, I'm going to give you everything that you would normally get from this class about public goods versus artificially scarce goods and government intervention into externalities and this crazy thing called the Lorenz curve and some other stuff. But we'll kind of tone it back a little bit after that. Um, let you guys have a little bit of a life and everything, but I want to keep the pedal to the metal until then. All right, so that's it. All right, have a great rest of your day, and let me know if I can help with anything.